Chicken, beef, and lamb. Welcome back to Santa Siren. I'm Xavier.
I'm Dylan. Welcome back to another episode, and we have a familiar guest today to discuss the AFL. It's a preview of all the teams. We have a tier maker, but first, and more importantly, Darcy, how are you?
I'm all right, mate. Very keen to get going on this tier maker. Been thinking about it a lot recently, yeah.
Yes, too. Zave, I know you're keen on it. Anything you want to share before we get straight into it?
Not yet. I reckon we should get into it.
Let's get straight into it. I'll pull it up right now. And the first team, and I'll ask Darcy, how do you feel about the Pies?
Look, I reckon they're going to have a massive drop-off from last year, obviously, with a few of their losses. But I still think if they pull it all together, I still think they're a good chance to make a run for the finals. Yeah, they've still got class, still got a lot of good players. They've got Grundy, Pendlebury, DeGoey. I feel like with that core, you can still make the finals despite all the moves they've done over the off-season that probably haven't gone their way.
I do agree, but I tend to think that they probably had one of the worst, if not the worst, off-season. They lost Adam Treloar, who was prominent for the team, Jaden Stevenson, who went to your Roos, Atu, and then Tom Phillips.
I think I'm a bit more of a fan of Collingwood than some other people, or at least not of them, but of the moves they've done recently. They gave up Stevenson, but to be honest, he wasn't even getting a game for the entire year. The one, obviously the big one that they lost was Adam Treloar, but if they didn't lose Treloar and Stevenson, and as you said, Phillips, they would have lost Moore and DeGoey through free agency, and that probably would have hurt even more than letting people go for nothing. I think they're finals hopefuls. Obviously, they did lose some players, but they're also going to get some back. Jeremy Howe, he was injured for almost the whole year, and he'll be back this year. And then we've also seen like Braden Maynard and Darcy Moore take massive leaps in their game. So I think finals hopefuls.
Do you believe that Jaden Stevenson and a couple of other players dropped form because of the lack of crowds or maybe a bit of homesickness?
It's obviously from our position, it's a little bit harder to tell than from a player's perspective because we're not in the bubble, we're not traveling, we're not playing in front of no fans or in front of lots of fans every week. But it might have contributed to it, but I don't know, to be honest.
I do feel like at Collingwood that there is a bit of a culture issue, though. It seems like needs to be, obviously, the whole racism thing and Eddie Maguire leaving during the week. I feel like there does seem like there is a culture issue around the club, and that could have contributed to some of the players wanting to leave. And the way Adam Treloar was dealt with, I reckon, was handled very poorly. So I feel like there is a lot more going on than just what we can see.
So, although they did lose some great players, as I mentioned, it does create more opportunities for, as Xavier mentioned, Braden Maynard and Taylor Adams to step up once again. So, I think we'll stay with finals hopefuls, but once again, wouldn't be surprised if they did make finals or if they were in the middle of the road.
Just on Darcy's culture point, I think they have had more controversies than any other team, and it's not really close. We saw Sidebottom had his drunken incident. DeGoey's been through multiple. Stevenson and his betting. Obviously, the Harry O'Brien situation right now.
Yeah.
They're just some of the ones I think of off the top of my head, but they've had a lot more than any other team.
Mm.
And just quickly with that one, do you reckon some of that will fall back onto Buckley or even Pendlebury? And an extension to that question, do you reckon Pendlebury will be captain as of 2022?
I'm sure it will fall back onto them. I'm not sure that it should, but obviously as the leaders of the club, when there's issues that are going on, it's always going to fall back onto the coach and even the captain. I'm not sure that he will be captain. I think at the moment he's the best option, but he's obviously getting up there in age and there'll be other people that are coming through that will be looking to take that from him.
It 100% will fall back on Pendles, though. We saw in a different sport, the Australian saga fell back on Steve Smith with the cricket, and just another example of it could be Pendlebury. So the Pies remain in the finals hopefuls, and Das, I'll let you kick us off about your favourite, if not second favourite, overtaken North, the Brisbane Lions.
Yeah, it depends on the week. So if I'm being honest, Brisbane definitely contenders. If they're not favourite, they're probably second favourite to Richmond. But yeah, they're a growing team. They're still pretty young. They're just going to get better and better every year. And I reckon it's just a matter of time until they win one.
Yeah, and Joe Danaher and Eric Hipwood, hopefully if they can maintain their accuracy, that is a deadly forward line. So great additions for them. Save, anything on the lines?
Certainly contenders for me. As you said, Joe Danaher, I think he's one of the best pickups, if not the best pickup for this off-season. We know he struggled with his injuries and he's had some problems, but he's going to fit into that forward line. I've said before, and I'll say it again, I think the number one thing they missed all of last year was a key forward. Hipwood wasn't getting it done, and every time they kicked it forward, it just came straight back out. So if Danaher can be that option, and if he can play to his best, they're going to be right up there, and if not the best team.
And when you've got Charlie Cameron as your main option forward, like he's a very good player, but he's just probably not big enough to just get it to ground and compete for every single one, especially when he's playing against players like Grimes and the like.
Mm-hmm. And that'll help as well. It'll help Charlie Cameron, Danaher's addition, because he's going to have to take the best defender every week. He's going to have to go to him. So, and there's going to be more crumbs on the ground. He's going to bring them more. If he's not going to mark it, he's probably going to bring it down. I think he's like over 2 meters tall. So, good addition.
And adding a low-risk, high-reward player of Nikia Cockatoo from the Cats. But losing Steph Martin will put pressure on Oscar McKinney, who I think can hold his own if he stays healthy. And they've got Archie Smith as a backup. So definitely a great roster for the Lions. Next is the West Coast Eagles, who I've always enjoyed watching and love their midfield, especially Shuey, Sheed, can go on forever, Gaff, etc. But I believe they're still finals or contenders.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm leaning towards contenders, but they're at the lowest, they're finals, because again with injuries, they were struck really hard just as the finals were rolling around. Elliot Yeo didn't play. I think Gaff missed time. Josh Kennedy was missing just before the final started. I think Darling got injured as well. It's been a while, but a lot of their gun players were all injured, and obviously it's going to take a toll on them. So.
And the additions of Zach Langdon and Alex Witherden. Langdon, he'll create some forward crumbs, and with the unavailability of Venables and Rioli, he'll add some depth as well. And Alex Witherden, you know what he's going to bring? Courageous backman who can hold his own as well.
Yeah, one of my favourite players, Alex Witherden. I think he's going to slot into a bit of the Shannon Hearn role. Obviously, he's getting up there in age as well, so he might take a little bit of a step back this year, and hopefully Witherden can fill that up seamlessly.
Yeah, so with the Eagles for me, I'd like to say they're finals, but I do feel like every year you can make the argument they're aging, they're getting a bit old. You reckon they're going to slow down, but every year they just manage to somehow right again and again. So I feel like they would have to fit in the contenders spot just purely off of how well they manage to do it every year.
The team that's closest to home for me, the Saints, and I won't say too much except a great trade period. Brad Crouch, Jack Higgins, and a veteran in Sean McKernan, if needed.
I think for St Kilda, I think they're finals hopefuls. I don't think Jack Steele stepped into the role last year, but he's only done it for 1 year. So at the moment, I'm not willing to say that they've got that out-and-out star like other teams have, like Richmond with Dustin Martin, or even Carlton to a lesser extent with Paddy Cripps. But finals hopefuls, I don't want to put them as a lock just yet.
I'd have to agree with you there. Yeah, I'd say they've done it 1 year. They played very well last year, but they've only really done it 1 year, and it sort of seemed to come out of nowhere, particularly with Jack Steele and some of the other players stepping up last year. I'd like to see them back it up this year, and then from then on, I could say they are finals locks. But for this year, they've only had 1 year to really show that they can do it. I'd just like to see it again.
Yeah, 100%. I think Jack Steele 100% broke out this year, and no one really did see it coming, but he was one of the best players in the league, and easily one of the best players in the league. He finished with an All-Australian selection. And do you think he'll back it up this year, Darcy?
I reckon he'll be good. He'll be very good, but he won't be as good as what he was. I feel like there's a lot of things going on, just the momentum behind St Kilda, playing so well, all the media hype around them. I feel like it was just a big year for him. I feel like he will still remain around fringe for All Australian, but I don't think he will be as good as he was, as particularly with players coming in. Probably has to take a step back with Brad Crouch coming in. So I feel like he'll be good, but
I
not.
think the news broke just recently as well that he will be the co-captain for St Kilda going into this year as well. So
Sure will. Yep.
congratulations to him.
Yeah. Alongside Jaron Geary. And the win in the final definitely improved the culture of the Saints. They haven't won a final since 2011 or 2010, I should say. So a long drought, but that's been broken, and hopefully they can turn it around this year and go even further. The Western Bulldogs, in my opinion, the best midfield in the league, and they added Adam Treloar to that star power of Bontempelli, McRae, Dunkley, and geez, those four names, they just scare any opponent.
I think finals hopefuls again. As you said, they've got the best midfield, and it goes even deeper than just the four you said. I'm not sure if you said Hunter, but then they've also got like Liberatore, and it's just one of the deepest midfields, as well as having the absolute star power of the Australians they've had this year and maybe in past years as well. But I think their lack of key position player is really a bit of an issue for them. We know, what's his name? Tim English struggled a little bit in the finals last year. He's obviously dominated around the ground, but in the middle, he's been dominated a little bit. But my bigger issue is their key forwards and key defenders. I think Alex Keith and, I haven't talked about footy for a while. What's the other? Aaron Norton. As certainties and locks in their key positions. But other than that, I'm not sure that they really have a forward or a defender that's going to lock down or kick goals for them. So if they can find one of those, or if Josh Bruce can find his St Kilda form, maybe there'll be certainties for the finals. But at the moment, I haven't quite seen it.
I do believe you're forgetting one forward, Save, and that's Jamara Ugle-Hagan. Predicted to be the next Buddy Franklin. In his first year, he has an opportunity, and he could seriously make an impact.
Yeah, maybe, but it's hard for key position players to come in and make the massive impact in their first season. Obviously, we know they take a while to develop, unlike midfielders who sometimes come in and dominate from the start, as we saw with Matt Rowell and Sam Walsh. But if he does come in and plays like a professional and a very good key forward, then they'll make the finals.
Mitch Hannon gives their forward line another dimension as well.
Yeah, I reckon Dogs, with the quality they've got in the midfield and the way they've just developed around the edges, they've got so many, they're absolutely loaded. I would have them as finals locks. I've got them above Collingwood and Kilda, and I don't think there's many teams you could say are better than what the Dogs are right now.
I do agree with that. We can do some shifting at the end if we disagree, but for the moment, I've got them as a finals lock. The Tigers, back-to-back premiers, and they didn't add anyone to the club. In fact, they lost Jack Higgins, the handy small forward, and Oleg Markov, who won a grand final, and then has the opportunity to blossom at the Suns. But I think they'll maintain their consistency and should be a finals lock, and probably contenders again.
100%. It's got to be one of the easiest ones to do. Obviously, coming off back-to-back grand finals and grand final victories, you got to have them as contenders.
Yeah, without a doubt. Like, you can't go against the Tigers, really. They're a great club. You can't really say much against them, to be honest. 3 grand final wins in the last 4 years. You got to have them locked in as a contender.
And they always seem to find these role players who just play their part each week. You've got Shea Bolton, who stepped up this year. They did have Markov, who was playing well, but then left. And I think the loss of Jack Higgins probably isn't ideal for them. I know he was squeezed out for young Jakey Arts, but just the loss of that could hurt the forward line, but not as much as to kick him out of the finals.
Well, I think, once again, it can't really hurt them. I think it's similar to, who was I talking about before? Alex Witherden, I guess, is similar to him. But he wasn't getting a game for Richmond. Obviously, as you said, got squeezed out for Jake Hart. So I'm not sure that it will hurt them that much, considering they were winning without him. So they should win without him this year and make it to the finals, and maybe even the grand final.
Go back to back to back. The first time since the Lions in the early 2000s. The Gold Coast Suns, Das, what's going through your head?
Um, Look, Gold Coast has been improving a lot in recent years. They've shown some great signs. You got Rankin, you've got King, you got Matt Rao. I feel like I'd like to say middle of the road, even finals hopefuls, but I feel like we only saw 4 games of Matt Rao. We can't put him up to the standard of those 4 games. We can't expect that for a full season until he has proven that he can do it for a full season. But for me, at this point, they're still in the rebuilding stage. They do have some great players, young players developing, but I feel like they haven't really proven enough. Like they were still bottom of the ladder last year. I feel like, yeah, they sort of have to prove themselves more than just the 4 games they had with Matt Rao for me to put them any higher.
And another boost of speed with Atkins and Markov. But yeah, I do agree with you. Either rebuilders or the middle of the road. Save?
I think the Gold Coast are middle of the road. I got it here. They finished 14th last year. And obviously they're going to get Matt Rao back. He only played 4 games last year, as Darcy said. He's going to be an absolutely amazing pick. Plus whoever they picked up in the off-season. I can't really think of anyone
Rory
right
Atkins, Oleg Markov.
now. Yeah, as you said before, sorry. But yeah, I think they'll be better. They'll continue to get better. Obviously, they're still a young team. So they're middle of the road for me. I think they've rebuilt for too long to not be there.
The Hawks, in my opinion, leaning towards the rebuild stage, but they only gave up a 4th pick for Kyle Hartigan, who's a solid defender, Tom Phillips, and they lost Isaac Smith to their rivals, ironically the Cats. So, in my opinion, rebuilders, but not enough to be wooden spooners.
They lost Tom Scully as well to retirement this year. So they're rebuilders, at least for me. I can't see them winning that many games this year. They've lost some other people to retirement as well. Ben Stratton retired, and
John Padden, a doubt.
Someone else. Yeah, Jonathan Patton, obviously injury history for him. So rebuilders at the least for me. I can't see them winning too many games.
And they did lose a few attempts to lure players such as Aidan Corr and Braden Pruce, who could have been solid role players, but not enough to boost them up to the middle of the road. They're rebuilders, in my opinion.
I'd have to agree with you both there. They've still got a Brownlow medalist in Tom Mitchell. He won it 2-3 years ago. He's still pretty recently a Brownlow medalist. I feel like string some good games together, he'd be going good. Still got players like Warple still developing, who looked like a star a few years back, or star in the making a few years back. I feel like last year was just a bit of an off year for them, and they can pull it together a bit. So yeah, obviously not wooden spooners for that reason. But I do feel like rebuilders is the right spot for that.
Yeah. The Adelaide Crows unfortunately lost Brad Crouch, Atkins and Hartigan. They did draft Jackson Haitley from the preseason draft, and they also picked up the local gun forward Riley Thilthorpe with their first pick. I do think they'd still be contenders for the wooden spoon.
Yeah, without a doubt. They were terrible last year. They were atrocious. And they're only getting really older and worse for some of the best players. Rory Sloane, Taylor Walker, Daniel Talia. They're all just, I feel like they're just getting worse. They haven't pulled a full rebuild yet. So they will be down the bottom all this year.
Yeah.
I think we can leave them there for the moment, but I think I might want to move them up a little bit later on in the video. You might see why. But yeah, I feel really bad for Adelaide. Obviously, they've had the controversy of the off-season training camp.
Preseason camp.
And they've lost all of their players from their grand final, or pretty well all of their players. Off the top of my head, Eddie Betts, even the ones this year, Rory Atkins, Charlie Cameron, Jake Lever. There's just, the list goes on and on of who they've lost, but wooden spooners for now. Bottom 2, I reckon.
The Bombers, and Save, I'll let you get underway with this one.
I think rebuilders or middle of the road for me. Dylan Shield, I like him. I like Zach Merritt as well. Andy McGrath was developing into a star and really broke out last year, but they lost Danaher, who only played the second half of the year, or not even a couple of games, but they were really disappointing last year and didn't get as many wins on the board as some people may have thought. And they lost Adam Sard as well, who was playing well for them.
And Orazio Fantasia to the Power. But they did pick up Jai Caldwell, who I know a few other teams were going for, Peter Wright from the Suns, and Nick Hind, the speedster from the Saints. So another boost of speed, much like the Gold Coast Suns. But yeah, I do see them as rebuilders.
Bit different of both your opinions. I do see them as wooden spooners.
Yeah, I was leaning towards rebuilders or wooden spooners.
I feel like last year there seemed to be a massive issue sort of around the culture, particularly with the new coach coming in. Can't quite remember his name. But I feel like with the new coach coming in, Woosha going out, and there seemed to be big issues, particularly around Bell Chambers and then not giving him a last game. Big players like Sard, who only sort of recently, last 5 years, have entered the team. So Sard, you got Danaher leaving, you got Fantasia leaving. I feel like it just sort of reveals that there must be a few things going wrong in the club, and I feel like it'd be hard for them to get it together this year. They don't really have enough assets that I feel like will grow throughout the year to bring them into the 14 to 12th position. So I do feel like they will be down the bottom and contending for the wooden spoon.
I will say, contrary to your opinion, Das, they have set themselves up for their best draft hand in history, 3 top 10 picks in the next year's draft class, but I think we'll stick with either rebuilders or wooden spooners. Zay?
I might have the last say here. I think rebuilders as well, because I still think they've got a few too many good players to let them come dead last. So Dylan Shield, Dyson Heppel, Andy McGrath, as I was saying before, and then obviously Cale Hooker and Michael Hurley as well. Although they're getting old, they're still very good players, and I can't see them coming dead last. So, but obviously I wouldn't want to be a Essendon fan right now, as I think they're stuck in the middle a little bit. They're not going to make the finals, obviously, and I don't think they're going to have the best pick because they won't come last. So don't want to get the going for them.
Fair enough, yeah. Well, before Zave gets a say with the Blues, I'd say one of the better trade periods in the league, Zach Williams, Adam Sard, and then the speedster from Geelong, Lockie Fogarty. So I do think they're leaning towards finals hopefuls, but that's just me.
I feel like just with Carlton, I feel like they have a good list, but it's just a matter of bringing it together. It'll be the first year with some of the new players. I feel like they are a good team, but it's just they need a season or two to bring it all together. And then come next year or the year after, they are probably contenders. But for me at the moment, they're middle of the road. I'm not sure they're going to be able to pull it together all in 1 year.
Yeah, well, they did fill the void of Cade Simpson as well with Adam Sard, so great recruiting.
I'm a little bit different to both of you. I think Carlton are definitely contenders. But I do think there are finals hopefuls. As you said, Adam Sard and Zach Williams are both very good pickups for us. I think Zach Williams is a little bit overpaid, but they're going to fill the halfback position, as you said, of Cade Simpson. Cripps, I think he battled with injury a fair bit throughout last year, and he'll be better this year, hopefully back to his Brownlow contending best. Sam Doherty is now a year removed from his injury. Sam Walsh should only get better, as well as some of our other young guns. Charlie Curnow, who we missed all of last year, should play the second half of this year. I know Patrick Cripps said in the media recently that he's tracking well. So I think finals hopeful. I think I could definitely see us finishing like 8th, maybe even 7th. Last year, I got it here. I think we finished 11th. So that's only 3 spots out of the top 8. So I think finals hopefuls. We're definitely better than we were last year.
Now, Das, we know Xavier as an extremely passionate Carlton supporter, but from a non-biased perspective, are you middle of the road or are you agreeing with Xavier?
I think I heard the word contender in there at some point. I'm not sure about that one at all. I am thinking middle of the road. They probably do have a chance at the finals, but I wouldn't have them above either either Collingwood or St Kilda at the moment. I wouldn't have them level with them.
You want to have a friendly little wager, a friendly little sound of siren wager. What do you want to bet that Carlton finishes above one of Collingwood or St Kilda? Just one.
Go on.
One or two.
20 bucks.
$20. I'll do 10. I'm not that confident.
20 bucks.
Deal.
The next team, the Mighty D's, who managed to pick up Ben Brown from your Roos Darce, but unfortunately lost Braden Pruce and Mitch Hannon. But still a good side. Jack Viney holding up the midfield. Nathan Jones is aging and it could be his last year.
I would have the middle of the road there. I feel like they've got Christian Petrarca, Clayton Oliver, both all-Australian caliber players. They've got Max Gawn, who's also probably top 3 ruck in the league, if not the best at the moment. I feel like they've got some great players. They sort of don't really seem to get it going most years, but if they do get going, they could definitely make the finals. But for me, they'll be sitting middle of the road like they have the last few years.
Yeah. Ben Brown will partner Wiedemann and Luke Jackson in a developing and young D's forward line.
Yeah.
For me, they're either middle of the road or finals hopefuls. Was it Jack Viney you said might retire, Dylan?
No, it was
Nathan Jones.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say Jack Viney's only 26. What are you talking about? But yeah, I think probably Nathan Jones last year. You're probably right. Yeah, middle of the road or finals for me. I think Ben Brown's a good pickup. I think they fall into a similar boat as Essendon. Tom McDonald wasn't all he looked to be and didn't really stand up last year. So they did need a key forward that could take a mark, kick a couple goals for them. So I would have said finals hopefuls going into the video, but I don't think they're better than Carlton, to be honest. So I think middle of the road maybe.
I do feel like Ben Brown is a system player. He worked in North Melbourne because he was the number one and there wasn't really much competition for the number one. You had Drew Petrie and Jared Wade, who are solid number 2 or 3, but Ben was number 1, and that's why he was getting those 60-goal seasons. But I feel like it might be tough for him to move into that Melbourne side who's played a few years together, and the system's not really built around him as much. I still see him as a solid player, 30, 40-goal season, but I feel like he probably won't just turn the whole club around.
Yeah, especially when form was elusive for him last year. But hopefully he returns to his prime self, and who knows, the D's may be 6th, 7th seed.
I would like to see Ben Brown go to Collingwood because I think the system, as you were saying, is exactly the same system they run at Collingwood.
Exactly.
I mean, they try and hit Mason Cox every time, and if he doesn't mark it, it falls down, and they've got all their smalls there to try and clean it up for them. But Ben Brown is so much better than Mason Cox.
Ben Brown is better
than
Mason Cox. Yeah, exactly.
I think Collingwood's play style would have really suited him. Just Ben Brown directly leading up to the midfielders and getting the ball to ground, taking marks and continuously leading. We know he's got the massive work ethic and the big tank. So I think he would have fit in really well at Collingwood. But
Yep.
That's just hindsight.
The Power, who had once again one of the better trade periods, bringing in Aliir and Orazio Fantasia. Aliir, great, tall, structured backman who can possibly motivate the others. And in my opinion, the Power will be finals locks.
Oof, I believe it's contenders for sure. Finishing top of the ladder this year. They did. I feel like picking up Aliir, you get blokes like Butters, Dersma. There's a few of them still growing. I feel like they're just going to get better. So they're definitely contenders for me. They're probably top 4 locks.
Yeah. So contenders for you, Zave, or just the finals lock?
I think I agree with you, Dylan. I think finals, at the moment, I think they're finals locks. They should get better, to be honest, though, because Aaliyah is a great pickup, as Darcy said, and then they've got Butters, Dersma, and Rosie, who they hype on about. So maybe finals, maybe contenders, but I think finals at the moment.
So you reckon they're going to get better this year, but then better than last year, but last year they came first in.
I thought you'd say that. I didn't really rate them last year. I thought they were a little bit contender. I thought they were a little bit of like pretenders because, yeah, they didn't beat that many top 8 sides. I don't think they may have. That's just a guess, but I don't think they're as good as Richmond, West Coast, Brisbane, or one more team that we'll see later on. So I think they're the 5th best team in the league, in my opinion.
However, they did only lose by a goal in the final to the Tigers, and they have improved their side. So I think Darcy's convinced me. I'll put them in the contenders, and we'll quickly move on to the Sydney Swans.
Rebuilders or wooden spoons. It's just all I've got to say.
Yeah, I reckon you got some quality. You got Isaac Heaney. You've got.
Oh, yeah, okay. Heaney's coming back. Rebuilders.
You've still got Buddy Franklin. You've still got some good players around there. I do have them as rebuilders. Probably not one spoon for the moment. But, yeah, I feel like you can't really go wrong with some of the quality they've got there. You've still got Luke Parker, one of your favourite players, Dave. So, yeah, I reckon rebuilders for me.
They do have a lot of quality players. Rampy, Heaney, Parker, Franklin. But again, a lot of them are getting up there in age, especially Franklin and Kennedy. But if Franklin manages to get back to his best and kick 60, they'll be middle of the road.
Yeah, and getting a ruckman was paramount for them because of injuries to Sam Naismith, Callum Sinclair. They picked up Tom Hickey, and he fits the bill nicely. But yeah, Leah's versatility will be severely missed, and the Swans should stay as rebuilders.
I do have a question for you guys.
Yep.
How many goals do you think Buddy Franklin will kick?
50?
Oof, I was going low. I was going to say he'd kick 26. I feel like he won't pull together a full season. I reckon he'll play 10 games, score 26.
I think he'll kick 40 plus. And that's maybe not even playing a full season. Do we know? I'm not sure. I haven't checked the fixture. Is it a full season this year?
22 rounds.
Full season.
Yeah, I think he'll kick 40 this year. I can see him playing like 16 games, 17 games, and I think that's enough to get him to 40. He's just one of the best players I've ever seen. Every time he kicks goals, and that's just how he operates. So.
I just reckon he'll start well, and then he'll hit round 8 or 9. He'll get a big injury, put him out until around 20-ish, and then he'll come back in and kick a couple. I don't see him pulling together a full season, and I could see it being his last, in theory.
I think he'll be motivated to reach the 1,000 milestone, in my opinion. That's why.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So the Swans rebuilders and the Cats, who are just ridiculous, to be fair. And they've added Jeremy Cameron, they've added Sean Higgins and Isaac Smith as well. And they've only lost Fogarty and Cockatoo, who were barely getting a spot on the side. So they're definitely contenders, no hesitation.
I agree. I think right now, looking at it, I think they're probably the premiership favourites in my eyes. We know they lost to Richmond in the grand final, but as you said before, Richmond didn't really add anything, and Geelong really, really has. Jeremy Cameron, in my opinion, is still the best key forward in the league, although he had a down year last year. And then Higgins and Isaac Smith really add like another layer to Geelong. We know in previous years they've had that inside bruiser in like Dangerfield, Selwood, so on. But now they've got the outside class and pace and Smith and Higgins that can really add in contenders and I think premiership favourites.
So just looking at that right now, I would say I wouldn't have West Coast as contenders anymore because I wouldn't say they're on the same level as any of those other players, any of the other teams. I
had the exact same thoughts, but about Port Adelaide.
That's what I thought, Zave. I agree with you. Port Adelaide, in my opinion. But we'll revisit it at the end because there's still 3 more teams. And we're on to Darcy's team, the Kangaroos, who, in my opinion, had a very very nice trade period. They lost Sean Higgins, who's aging, still a good player, obviously. Ben Brown, who's out of form, but they added Jaden Stevenson, the rising star, Asu Basenavalagia, Lockie Young, and Aiden Core. So a great improvement to their roster, but unfortunately, I do see them as wooden spooners still.
Yeah, I did say before I'd like to move Adelaide up to rebuilders, and this is the reason why. I think North Melbourne will finish last. Maybe not, but I think they will.
I would say on paper, you'd have to say they are a chance for wooden spooners. I'd have them at the same level as Adelaide.
Yeah.
But I feel like we've got more upside than Adelaide does based off the trade period alone. So I feel like we could pull together a surprise season and finish 12th, 13th. Like we have done that before. But on paper, you'd have to say they would be around 17th, 18th. But in the words of Xavier, I reckon we could be contenders.
Well, I think the reason I think they'll finish last is they finished equal last year. They finished 17th on percentage. And then they lost their two best players of like the last 5 years with Goldstein as well. So in Zeeble and Ben Brown. Ben Brown had 3 consecutive seasons of 60-plus goals, and Higgins had a Australian selection and a few very good years. So they're big losses. As you said, Stevenson and R2D2 come in, but I don't think they're quite as good as Higgins and Ben Brown.
Yeah, the GWS Giants now, who copped a massive blow. They lost Caldwell, Cameron, Cores, I just mentioned, Zach Williams, and there's one other to the Eagles, Zach Langdon. But they brought in Jesse Hogan. They took a punt on him, which could be high risk, high reward. They definitely lost their position in the finals lock for me, and in my opinion, finals hopefuls.
I think GWS is the most interesting one of all of these teams for me. I think the last 4, maybe even 5 years, I've had them as my premiership favourites, and I can't do it this year. Even last year, I had them as premiership favourites, and they didn't even make the 8. So they definitely burnt me last year. And then they've gotten worse as well. So they finished 10th, and then, as you said, they lost Williams and Jeremy Cameron. So yeah, I think still finals hopefuls just because of the talent they've still got there, like Josh Kelly, Canelio. They've just got so much talent. It's insane. But they didn't finish top 10 and they got worse. Top 8 and they got worse. Finals hopefuls, I think.
Yeah. Do you feel like with them, they are finals hopefuls right now, but they just can't being petite players. I reckon you give it another, say this time next year, and say they lose Kelly or Canelio or some of the likes like that. I do feel like they will just completely fall off the cliff of the earth.
Yeah, and Josh Kelly is a free agent this year as well, so he can walk wherever he wants to go. But I think they're easily the weirdest team right now. I think we could look back in it, not even this time next year, but this time in like 4 months' time, and they could be contenders or they could be rebuilders. To be totally honest, they've got that talent, but it didn't work for them last year, and I don't really see any reason why it should work this year.
The final team of today, the Fremantle Dockers, who, in my opinion, are leaning towards either middle of the road or finals hopefuls, but should be middle of the road.
I agree, middle of the road. They could make their push, but I don't see them as being better than Carlton, Melbourne, and maybe even, or probably similar to Gold Coast. But they've still got Nat Fyfe, who's an absolute star, and I know Brayshaw, who shocked me last year. Not shocked, but impressed me a lot. Yeah, he was very good last year. So middle of the road, I think.
Yeah, well, their trade period revolved around clearing cap space and Hogan. So next year they may have a bigger trade period and bring in potentially Jordan Clark, who they were aiming for, who unfortunately didn't become available for them. But Das, what's your take on the Dockers?
Yeah, I feel like they do have a lot of upside. They've obviously still got 2-time Brownlow medalist Nat Fyfe. But there's nothing that suggests they could make a good push for the finals. I would have them middle of the road. They're obviously not down as bad as Hawks, Essendon, Swans, or any of the wooden spoons we've got there. But I don't see them making a push for the finals. Even I'd have them probably less of a chance with Melbourne and Carlton.
Yeah.
So I would have the middle of the road.
Yeah, can't refute that. Now, looking at the list, it's not too bad, but there is a big gap here, and I do think we need to move one of these 5 teams down to finals.
I think we also need to move one team up to the finals hopeful, I think.
I think we'll go Carlton up.
Yeah, I reckon.
Or the D's. D's up.
Carlton.
D's up.
No. Carlton up.
I was going to say, if I can't convince you to get Carlton to finals, we're screwed.
I don't reckon Port or Eagles are contenders compared to Richmond, Geelong on another level above Brisbane. But Brisbane are better than any of the 3 teams in the final slots.
I agree with that as well. That's fine by me.
I agree with this list too.
I think if we did have West Coast up there, that would be fine as well, because I don't think Port are as good as any of those 4. But then West Coast would be the worst of the 4. So
yeah, and by probably quite a distance.
Yeah. I got one more question for both of you.
Ooh, jump the gun.
Rank the contenders 1, 2, 3. Best to worst.
Basing it off last year, I think it has to be Richmond, Geelong, Brisbane. However, with the trade period, I'd go Geelong, Richmond, Brisbane.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to discount Richmond as a chance.
Yeah, it is.
I would like to say Geelong, Brisbane, Richmond, but I feel like on paper, realistically, Geelong and Brisbane have better lists than Richmond, probably by a mile if you look at the names. But Richmond just seems to get it working every year. I do feel like Riewoldt will probably be declining quite a bit this year. Same with Cochin, but I think you got to go Geelong, Richmond, Brisbane.
I agree with you, Darcy. Oh, wait, you said Geelong, Brisbane, Richmond. I think I was agreeing with you earlier when you were saying.
But I feel like Brisbane will get it together.
Yeah, I think Geelong, Brisbane, Richmond on paper, but I'm still going to have to go Geelong, Richmond, Brisbane, because Richmond has had the proven record, obviously, back-to-back grand final victories. So, but then Geelong has obviously the off-season, they've gone all in. It's like the definition of all in. They've signed 2 30-plus-year-olds to an already aging list. So if they don't win this year, maybe they won't be as good in the future. But Geelong, Richmond, Brisbane for me.
Yep.
So I'll take a photo of this list, and at the end of the year, we'll review it and we'll see how close we were, how far away we were. But that does it for today. Anything else to say, boys? Thanks for joining us, Darcy.
Just make sure you write down that Xavier promised you $20 if Carlton doesn't finish higher than Collingwood or Saints.
Do write that down.
All right, will do. Well, thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.
Cheers.